During my sister's wedding reception, right in the middle of her heartfelt toast to family and new beginnings, my ex-wife stood up from her table near the back and announced to the entire ballroom that I had stolen $50,000 from her dying mother's bank account 3 years ago and used it to fund my gambling addiction. The champagne glasses stopped mid-air, the string quartet's violins went quiet one by one, and 200 faces turned from her to me in the span of about 5 seconds. My sister's hand went to her mouth, still holding the microphone. My elderly father grabbed the edge of the table like he might fall over. Even the waiters froze with their trays of salmon, and I could see my brother-in-law's family, who I'd only met that morning, whispering frantically to each other about what kind of people his bride came from. My ex-wife wasn't done though. She kept going, her voice getting louder and more theatrical, saying that I had manipulated her poor mother in her final days, that I had forged documents, that I had gotten away with elder abuse and theft, and that she had stayed quiet all these years to protect my relationship with our daughter but couldn't keep this secret anymore, not when she saw me here celebrating family like I was some kind of decent person. She said her mother had died penniless because of me, that the family had to crowdfund her funeral, that I was a monster who preyed on vulnerable old women, and that everyone in this room deserved to know the truth about who they were breaking bread with. My daughter started crying at the kids' table. My niece was recording on her phone. The bride's friends were taking out their phones too. I could already imagine this spreading across social media within the hour, my face attached to words like theft and abuse and gambling addict. My current girlfriend reached for my hand under the table, but I could feel her trembling, probably wondering if any of this was true, if she really knew me at all. My business partner, who I'd invited to the wedding, was staring at me with this look of absolute horror and calculation, probably already thinking about how to distance the company from me. The whole room felt like it was tilting, like one of those nightmare scenarios where you're suddenly naked in public, except worse because this wasn't about embarrassment, this was about my entire character, my entire life, being demolished in front of everyone I cared about. My sister had started crying, her perfect wedding moment completely destroyed, and I could see her new husband putting his arm around her, both of them looking at me with confusion and something like betrayal, like how could I bring this drama to their special day? The mother of the bride, my aunt, was fanning herself and demanding someone call the police. My ex-wife's sister was nodding vigorously, backing up every word, shouting that she'd been there, she'd seen the bank statements, she knew what I'd done. I stood up slowly and pulled out my phone, my hand shaking but my mind suddenly very clear, because I'd been waiting for this moment for 3 years, ever since my ex-wife had first made these accusations privately during our custody battle. I opened my email app and connected my phone to the venue's AV system that was still set up from the ceremony. Within seconds, the projection screen behind the head table lit up with a forwarded email chain. I didn't say anything at first, just let people read. The first email was from my ex-wife to her sister, dated 4 months before her mother passed away, discussing in detail their plan to move their mother's assets into accounts that I couldn't access during the divorce, specifically mentioning the $50,000 they were worried I might have a legal claim to as community property since some of it had been gifted to both of us for our down payment years earlier. The second email was my ex-wife's mother's response, completely lucid and healthy, agreeing to the transfer and making it clear she was doing this to protect her daughter in the divorce, not because she was dying or incompetent. There were bank statements showing the money being moved to my ex-wife's sister's account in 3 separate transactions, all authorized by their mother with her own login credentials, timestamps, and even her security question answers. There was a screenshot of a text message from my ex-wife to her best friend saying she planned to accuse me of taking the money if I didn't agree to give up my request for 50-50 custody, literally saying that she'd make me look like a criminal if I didn't back down. I scrolled to the next image, which was a letter from my ex-mother-in-law's estate attorney, stating clearly that all of her finances had been distributed according to her will, that there were no discrepancies, no missing funds, no investigations, and no complaints filed with any authorities. Then I showed the medical records that I'd subpoenaed during the custody case, proving that my ex-mother-in-law had been in perfect cognitive health during all these transactions, that she'd lived another 2 years after moving the money, and that she'd never once claimed to be a victim of anything. I pulled up my bank records from that entire 3-year period, showing no large deposits, no unusual activity, no gambling transactions whatsoever. I showed my tax returns. I showed statements from 2 different therapists that my ex-wife and I had seen during our marriage where she'd admitted to having issues with pathological lying when she felt threatened, something she'd been working on supposedly, though clearly not successfully. I showed text messages where she'd threatened to destroy my reputation if I didn't pay more in spousal support than the court had ordered. I showed an email where she'd told her lawyer, who had clearly not been comfortable with this plan, that she didn't care if the accusation was false because I deserved to suffer for leaving her. The room had gone from shock silence to a different kind of silence, the kind where people are reassessing everything they just heard, where the social mathematics are being recalculated in real time. I finally spoke, my voice steady even though I felt like I might throw up. I explained that 3 years ago when we were divorcing, my ex-wife had made these same accusations to try to gain leverage in our custody dispute. I told them that I'd hired a forensic accountant who traced every penny of her mother's money and found nothing missing, nothing suspicious, just a family moving assets around to protect them from a divorce settlement. I said that the court had reviewed all of this evidence, had dismissed her accusations completely, and had actually reduced her custody time because the judge found that she'd made knowingly false allegations in an attempt to manipulate the proceedings. I explained that I'd never wanted to humiliate her by making any of this public, that I'd kept quiet about her lies because we shared a daughter and I didn't want our child to grow up knowing her mother had tried to frame her father as a criminal. I said I'd hoped she would move on, get help, and let us co-parent in peace. I told the room that I'd brought copies of all of these documents with me today, which was true. I had them in my car, because my lawyer had warned me that my ex-wife had been making threats again recently and might try something at a family event where she knew I'd be vulnerable. I looked directly at my sister and apologized for bringing this to her wedding, my voice cracking a little, and I told her I'd tried to prevent this by not engaging with my ex's provocations, by taking the high road, by hoping she wouldn't actually be cruel enough to ruin her own sister's wedding just to hurt me. I explained that my ex-wife was my daughter's aunt, my sister's best friend from college, which was how we'd met in the first place, and that she'd gotten an invitation to the wedding because of her relationship with the bride, not with me, and that I'd actually asked my sister if she wanted me to skip the wedding to avoid any potential drama, but my sister had insisted I come because I was her brother and this was a family celebration. My sister was nodding, tears streaming down her face, and she walked over and hugged me right there in front of everyone. My girlfriend stood up and wrapped her arms around me from the other side. My father struggled to his feet and came over too, putting his hand on my shoulder. My business partner visibly relaxed and gave me a nod that said we were good. The bride's family started whispering, but in a different tone now, sympathetic rather than scandalized. My ex-wife had gone pale, her mouth opening and closing but no words coming out. Her sister tried to say something about how they'd been protecting the family, about how there must be some misunderstanding, but people were already turning away from them, the social tide completely reversed. Someone from the groom's side actually said out loud that trying to destroy someone's reputation with lies at a wedding was one of the most disgusting things they'd ever witnessed. My daughter had stopped crying and was looking at her mother with this expression of confusion and disappointment that broke my heart because no kid should have to see their parent exposed like that. My ex-wife grabbed her purse and her sister's arm and started pushing toward the exit, but before she could leave, my sister took the microphone back and said very clearly that she loved her friend but that lying about her brother, trying to destroy him in front of their family, and ruining this wedding in the process meant that she needed to leave now and that their friendship was over. She said it calmly but firmly, and the whole room heard it. My ex-wife left in tears, her sister shouting something about how we were all brainwashed, how she'd show everyone the real truth someday, but nobody was listening anymore. The wedding planner got the quartet playing again. My sister gave her speech again, this time dedicating it to family who stand by you and truth that comes to light. People came up to me throughout the rest of the night, apologizing for doubting me even for a second, praising me for staying calm, telling me I'd handled it with remarkable grace. My daughter came and sat with me during dinner, holding my hand, and quietly asked if everything Mom had said was a lie, and I told her that her mom was struggling with some things, that sometimes people who are hurting try to hurt others, but that I would never lie to her and that yes, everything said about me tonight was false. I told her I loved both her and her mother, that her mother's problems didn't make her a bad person but that what she'd done tonight was very wrong, and that I hoped someday her mother would get the help she needed. My girlfriend leaned over and whispered that she was sorry she'd doubted me for even a second when my ex had started talking, and I told her it was okay, that accusations like that are designed to make people doubt, that it was a normal reaction. My business partner came over during the dancing and said he'd actually already looked into some of what my ex had claimed years ago when we first became partners, not because he didn't trust me but because due diligence is part of business, and that he'd found nothing but wanted me to know he'd already been confident in my character before tonight. My brother, who I hadn't always gotten along with, found me at the bar and bought me a drink and told me he was proud of how I'd handled things, that a lot of men would have lost their temper or gotten defensive, but I just presented facts and let the truth speak for itself. The rest of the wedding was actually beautiful despite how it had started. My sister and her husband had their first dance, we all toasted to their future, and the attempted character assassination became this strange bonding moment for everyone there, like we'd all been through something together and come out stronger. People kept coming up to tell me about times they'd been falsely accused or lied about, sharing their own stories of vindication and survival. The bride's grandmother, who must have been 90 years old, told me that she could always tell a person's true character by how they handle being attacked, and that I'd shown mine tonight. My aunt apologized for saying someone should call the police, explaining that she'd just been shocked and reactive. Even some of my ex-wife's other friends who were there, people she'd apparently told her version of events to over the years, came and apologized, saying they believed her because why would anyone lie about something so serious, but that they were sorry for judging me without knowing the full story. By the end of the night, when my sister and her new husband were leaving for their honeymoon, she hugged me and whispered that she was sorry she'd ever stayed friends with my ex after the divorce, that she'd wanted to believe everyone could get along for the sake of family gatherings and my daughter, but that tonight had shown her who people really were. She said she should have believed me 3 years ago when I'd first told her what was happening, and I told her there was nothing to forgive, that complicated situations make for complicated choices. I drove home that night with my daughter asleep in the back seat, my girlfriend quiet beside me, and I felt this strange mix of vindication and sadness, because I'd won but winning had required humiliating my daughter's mother in public, had required displaying all that evidence and those private communications, had required turning what should have been a happy family celebration into a trial. My phone started buzzing with messages, people who'd been at the wedding sharing that they'd deleted any videos they'd taken during the accusation, that they wouldn't let this become social media gossip, that they were respecting the family's privacy. My lawyer texted that she'd heard what happened through the family grapevine and wanted to know if I wanted to pursue a defamation case, and I told her I'd think about it but probably not, that I just wanted peace and for my daughter to have as normal a life as possible. My ex-wife sent a long rambling text around 2 in the morning, not apologizing exactly but trying to justify what she'd done, saying she genuinely believed her own story by now, that she'd told it so many times it felt true, that she was scared of losing our daughter and had panicked when she saw me happy with someone new. She said she needed help and was going to talk to her therapist, and for once she sounded sincere rather than manipulative. I didn't respond that night, but I saved the message, another piece of evidence if I ever needed it, though I hoped I wouldn't. The next day, my sister called to check on me and to apologize again for everything. I told her that none of it was her fault, that people's choices are their own, and that I was just glad the truth had come out in a setting where so many people could witness it rather than having this accusation continue to spread through whisper networks where I'd never have a chance to defend myself. She told me that several guests had messaged her saying they'd been at the wedding when something remarkable happened, that they'd seen someone falsely accused and then vindicated in real time, and that it had actually made them think about times they believed rumors about people without evidence. I realized that as horrible as the experience had been, there was something powerful about truth being demonstrated so thoroughly in front of a community, about lies being exposed not through my angry denials but through documentation and evidence that couldn't be argued with. My daughter woke up late that morning and asked if we could have pancakes, and I made them while she told me about dancing with her cousins at the wedding and how pretty my sister's dress was, and she didn't mention her mother at all, and I didn't bring it up, figuring we'd have time for those conversations later when she was ready. For now, I just wanted her to be a kid eating pancakes, and I wanted to be a dad who'd protected his reputation and his ability to be present in her life, and I wanted to believe that sometimes standing up to lies with truth actually works, even when it's messy and public and painful.